Hi, I'm Michael B. Ross, and I'd like to welcome you to the High Performance Podcast, where leaders learn to think, behave, and communicate like a leader. And today's episode is called Unshakable Confidence. I love the opening tag of this. Confidence is what you trust, especially when it's tested. So I want to talk about confidence today, and not the type of confidence you see on social media. And I don't mean this to be trite, and I don't mean it to be disrespectful, but I do know a lot of people who feign one thing on social media. They pretend that their life is perfect, and then behind the scenes, they have a lot of challenges. I am one of them. I've done this before. I've projected on social media like everything's okay in my life when I was going through hell behind the scenes. So that's not the type of confidence I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about hype confidence. I don't want to talk about fake confidence. I don't want to talk about loud confidence. I want to talk about unshakable confidence, which has a resounding feel to it, doesn't it? When you say unshakable confidence, who wouldn't want more of that? Especially when the research shows that 85% of adults have a negative self-image. That's according to Dr. Joe Rubino, who's a world-renowned psychologist. And I will tell you that I have over 10,000 hours in one-on-one coaching. I can tell you, even those executives who you see who are buttoned up, dressed well, they walk into a room and they seem to reverberate confidence. Even those people who I've coached struggle with their confidence as well. So this isn't something that is the 15% of the world just has and the 85% of the world doesn't. This is something you can build. So the good news is, if you are struggling with your confidence today, you can grow it, you can build it. Because here is the truth. In my estimation, most people don't lack confidence. They lack clarity about what it is that they trust, because confidence always follows trust. And let me give you an example of this. When I was in college, I used to drive the same route every single day to college. I lived about a half hour away from my college, and I would drive the same route. I went over the same roads, the same turns, and I went over the same bridge every single day. There was a short bridge over a creek that I went over every single day. And I never thought twice about it. Never. I just get in the car, I'd grab my coffee, I'd drive, I'd turn on my teachings or my music, and I would drive, and I trusted that route until one day something didn't feel right. I went over that bridge that overlooked the creek, and it just felt a little bit rickety. That's the only way I could say it. If you've ever watched like Indiana Jones and you see them on these bridges that are going along these long ravines and they're shaky back and forth, I just had a feeling that the bridge was shaky, and I looked back and the bridge was literally doing this when I passed over the bridge. So you could feel it when you drove over it. Nothing dramatic, but enough that made me question and say, I don't know that I want to go over this route again. So I lost confidence in the bridge. Nothing actually happened. Nothing collapsed. It wasn't an accident. No warning sign. But internally, I lost trust. So the next day, I went a different route. I skipped the bridge and I went a little bit further down, which added about 5 minutes to my drive. But I decided that that was the safest thing and the best thing for me. And then I took that route the day after, and I took that new route the day after that. And a few days later, I drove by and I looked over to the road where the bridge is, and it was closed and barricaded. So it turns out I wasn't the only one who lost confidence in that bridge. And that stuck with me, because confidence didn't disappear randomly. It disappeared when trust was compromised. Because here's something most people don't know. The word confidence comes from the Latin word confidere, which means literally to put your faith in, to put trust in. This is why confidence is not arrogance. It is not bravado. It is not pretending you're unafraid. Confidence is knowing what you trust and relying on it. Confidence is knowing what you trust and relying on it. So that bridge didn't lose my confidence because of emotion. it lost my confidence because the structure itself was compromised. That has to be something that sticks in your mind. When the structure of what you are trusting and relying on feels compromised, that is where people lose confidence. So we lose confidence when, here's some ways that individuals lose confidence so we can talk about how to build confidence. So we lose confidence when our values are unclear. So when we are not sure about what we value, when an alternate value comes into play via relationship or a decision, we may be unsure about what to do. There are so many people who are riddled with analysis paralysis. It's one of the things I do in coaching with my clients all the time is I help them get out of analysis paralysis. And one of the things we look at is, what do you value? What do you value, and what is conflicting with that value in this decision? The next thing that causes us to lose confidence is when our principles are untested. So it's real easy to say that I will stand by my principles and I'll stand by my values no matter what, and then they get tested. You see this a lot with young men dating young women. When they have a value and the young woman comes in, she's looking real pretty and they like her a lot, and maybe she doesn't carry the same values as the young man, but he'll compromise for this woman, and vice versa is also true. Young women to young men, they see this guy and he looks great and they want him, but the values and the principles don't align. And so they compromise. And part of the reason that they do that is because their principles are untested. They're not adamant yet. Whereas a person who is confident does not compromise their values and principles no matter what. The number 3 reason people lose confidence is their disciplines are inconsistent. There's a saying that goes like this: impression without expression is the beginning of depression and the start of delusion. Impression without expression. So if we are impressed with something and we do not act it out, we do not express it. So we know we need to do something, we know we need to discipline ourselves, and we don't discipline ourselves, we start to become depressed and delusional about where we actually are in our lives. So we can't assume that we are disciplined. That is something that over time, you show consistency. It's planting and watering seeds. It is doing the same things over and over again without expecting any results. It's simply doing the work. That's what discipline is. It's being a disciple of what it is that you are following or what you believe in, and you either do or you don't. But when people are inconsistent in their disciplines, they lose confidence in themselves, because partly a discipline is something you commit to and I commit to. And if I say I'm going to do it and I don't do it, I don't trust myself to follow through, and therefore I lose confidence. And then number 4, this one I love, and I want you to hear this one. I really want you to hear this one. Our identity is outsourced. Let that sink in for a second. We lose confidence when our identity is outsourced. Here's an example. I, as a young man, was a basketball player. I identified as a basketball player. I told everybody, if you met me, what was the most interesting thing? I was a basketball player. I played basketball. I identified as a basketball player. I wrapped my identity in basketball. And so because my identity was wrapped in a sport, something external, something outside of me, then if someone's opinion of me was I was not a good basketball player, or I was an average basketball player, or a below average basketball player, I wrapped my identity into an outsourced view of who I was because I identified as a basketball player, which could be externally scrutinized, or someone's opinion of me as a basketball player could be mitigated or criticized or scrutinized. And so it caused my confidence in myself to wane. And I thought the only way to get my confidence back was to improve in my game to where I'd be so good no one could ever say anything negative about my game, which was absolutely ridiculous. Because if you think about it, it doesn't matter how good you are. People are talk trash on Michael Jordan. They talk trash on LeBron James. They talk trash on Steph Curry. They talk trash because they are insecure. They are not confident. And so if we outsource our identity, then we will never fully be confident. And people also think that confidence disappears because of failures. And that's what, again, back to the basketball analogy, if I didn't have a good game, someone thought I wasn't a good player. I thought I was not a good person. I'm a failure. And it's not true. Confidence disappears when what you're relying on no longer feels solid to you, just like that bridge. So that is the real struggle. So let me tell you what actually creates confidence. Unshakable confidence comes from trusting the right things and then acting them out consistently over time. So here are a few of those things. Values that work. I want you to take some time to do this on your own as well, but I'm going to walk through a couple of these. Okay, values that work. And let's use them in juxtaposition. So kindness over rudeness. Does kindness in a relationship work better than rudeness? Would I trust kindness or would I trust rudeness to give me a quality relationship? Now, I could test it. I could test the theory, and I could do that experientially. I can do that vicariously, meaning I can look at someone else who uses rudeness over kindness and see the quality of the relationship. I can look at someone who uses kindness over rudeness, look at the quality of their relationship, and deduce for myself that I would rather rely on the value of kindness to give me a quality relationship over rudeness. Integrity works better than shortcuts. So having the value of integrity that I'm going to do the right thing, even when no one's watching, I'm going to do quality work, even when no one's watching, then taking a shortcut to get something done, to get it out the door, to get it off my plate. Does integrity work more than shortcuts? Does doing things the right way work better than taking shortcuts? You have to determine this for yourself, okay? Because again, we don't want to say one thing and do another. And again, I have to say this over and over and over and over and over again. Belief is the precedent of all action. So if you say that you value integrity over shortcuts and yet you take shortcuts instead of integrity, you actually believe that shortcuts are better than integrity. We don't like to say the truth. We don't like to get down to brass tacks. But at the end of the day, what you value will be carried out with action. And so either your actions change to fit your beliefs or your beliefs change to fit your actions. Then one more value scenario: humility over ego, or ego over humility. You have to find values that work for you. Does humility in relationships and in your life work better than ego, or does ego work better than relationships? So part of it is, for you to have unshakable confidence, you have to know what you value and you have to stick by those. So it's important that you write down a set of core values that you will not compromise, that you will not let go of. Because when you're faced with a decision, you have to ask, what are my values? Especially when the decision is trying to shake your confidence. Your confidence will not be shaken if you know what you value and you're going to follow through with that no matter what. So when you've lived your values long enough, you trust them. And here's what I have found. This is 18 years of being a business owner, operator, entrepreneur. Here's what I have found being a father. Here's what I've found being a friend. Here's what I've found being a member of the community, a citizen of the United States of America, a veteran. I have found that kindness, integrity, and humility work much, much better in the pathway to success than rudeness, shortcuts, and ego. Okay? So that's what I have found. You can take vicariously through me that if you want to have confidence, use kindness, be kind to people, be a person of integrity, do what you say you're going to do, follow through, and be consistent. And finally, use humility. You are a masterpiece. You don't have to prove that you're a masterpiece. You don't have to give bravado that you're a masterpiece. You don't have to try to convince people you're a masterpiece. You can be humble and confident in who you are because you being a masterpiece is a fact. So trust in it and trust values that work if you want to build your confidence. Okay. Now next, number 2 is principles that you've tested. This, again, we're going over what actually creates confidence. Number 1 was values that work. Number 2 is principles you have tested. Principles you have tested. So I just told you values that work. I told you to trust me, live vicariously through my experiences in 18 years plus of being a business owner, operator, entrepreneur. But number 2, for you to really build confidence is principles you have tested. Here's a couple of examples. Number 1, hard work. Working hard. Putting in the grind. Does it work for you or does it not? I prefer for you to work hard, but I also prefer that you work smart. I think working smart is much better than working hard. Any successful person will tell you working smart is better than working hard. You can have a person that grinds all day, every day, but if they don't work smart, they're always going to be stuck in the grind. And I don't think that's the goal for anybody. I think the goal is we work hard, we get on the grind, we learn how it works, we learn the principle of grind and hard work, and then you learn how to work smart. Other principles that you could test is preparation. Does preparation for something that you have to do, does it work better than not being prepared? How about consistency? Does consistency work for you or does it not? And then accountability. So these aren't motivational quotes. They are principles that produce outcomes. And you have to find out what principles have worked for you that you've tested. So a great thing to do is to take a step back, you look at your values, and then you look at principles you've tested and evaluate. Take some time and go, I'm struggling with my confidence. You know what? Every time that I've felt confident in my life, I was working hard. I was preparing. I was consistent. I was accountable. And then you simply, if you're struggling with your confidence, you take a step back, you go, how about I get back to working hard? How about I get back to preparing well? How about I get back to being consistent and accountable? And if you shift whatever's going on in your life from principles you have tested because they are part of you, you don't have to borrow that from anybody else. You don't have to grab values. You don't have to try to be led by values. You are led by your own experience, which is very, very strong for unshakable confidence. Okay, number 3, being interested, not impressive. I love the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It was a book that changed my life. When I first started getting into leadership, I wasn't a very good leader. I was pretty ego-driven. I wasn't that humble. I was trying to prove myself. I was wrapping my identity in being a leader. I was promoted as a leader, and I wasn't going to let anyone down. And so I wasn't very good as a leader when I first started out. In fact, I had a terrible situation where I actually physically put my hands on a guy who worked for me because he wasn't doing his job. And I thought I had the right to put my hands on him and to shove him and scared him half to death, thinking that that would be the way to motivate, which is not a good way to motivate. It's also a way to get into a lot of trouble as well. It's a very foolish way to lead, and I felt terrible that happened. But one of the things in How to Win Friends and Influence People that stuck out to me more than anything else was stop trying to be interesting and important and start being interested in making others important. We spend way too much time as a civilization and as individuals. This goes for me too. I'm in the same boat thinking about ourselves. And at the end of the day, I don't mean this to be disrespectful. I don't mean this to also mitigate your value because you are a masterpiece. But the fact is, you're not all that important when it's all said and done. And the fact is that as far as recorded human history is concerned, we have about 6,000 years of recorded human history. 6,000, which means 100 years from now, people will rarely Remember you in general. You might have great grandkids by that time. You might have built a building with your name on it, and people will say the name of the building and not know who the heck you are. And that's just a reality. And so what we have found in behavioral science and in research is that people feel much better about themselves when they are refreshing others, when they're building others up, when they make other people interesting versus trying to make themselves interesting. So when you are more interested in what's going on with others, you're less interested in yourself, and you're more interesting to others when you do that. So curiosity, being curious, that creates connection. Connection builds trust, and trust fuels confidence. Having trust with other people, having trust with yourself that you are a person who puts other people above themselves and also elevates yourself. I'm not saying that you should not elevate yourself, but the fact is, when you are the type of person that makes other people feel important, when you build them up, it builds connection, which builds trust, which fuels confidence. So let's go on to number 4. Positive energy beats negative energy. My gosh, not toxic positivity, not like everything's going to be fine all the time. It's just not, I just think it's nonsense, this whole idea of toxic positivity too. I think it's silly, essentially. Because at the end of the day, optimism is authentic and pessimism is authentic. It is a disposition, and negativity drains a room and positive energy stabilizes a room. And I don't mean looking at what I think the term toxic positivity is rooted in is delusion. And I think that's nonsense in general. Anybody who's delusional, I think negative energy or pessimism is also delusional at its core. Because from what the research shows, 80 or 96% of fears are unwarranted. They never come to pass. That's from John Maxwell book, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. He talks about this, and he says 96% of fears are unwarranted. They never come to pass. And so toxic negativity, toxic positivity is rooted in delusion. And I'm not saying live in delusion. I'm saying that there is no problem in the world that we have found that doesn't have a solution to it, that we cannot find a solution for. It may not be there yet, but cancer, for example, the cure for cancer, it is on its way. Because one thing we do know throughout the course of human history is any disease, any ailment, anything that we've suffered through, we have found, whether it be through first, second, third, fourth generation, we find a solution as humans, and we figure out a way to solve problems. So, for example, if you have a garden that needs tilled, it needs weeded, it needs new soil, it needs to have rocks removed and noxious weeds, and needs protected from rabbits and squirrels. You're not going into the garden and looking at it and saying, everything's great, but this is the greatest garden ever. No, you look at it and you say, hey, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. But right now, there's a bunch of weeds. There's a bunch of bugs. There's a bunch of rocks. There's not good soil. There's no protection. So you don't look at a situation and act like there's no problems. That's, to me, toxic positivity. Just like the opposite side, which I think is way more prevalent, is toxic negativity. It's way more prevalent than toxic positivity. Somebody looks at the guy, oh, well, what's the use? Who cares? Oh, look at all this. See, so I get this garden, and it's just tore apart. There's nothing I can really do with this. Forget it. And then the person doesn't even try. That's toxic negativity. So what I mean is that you come into the room and you look for a way to solve every problem you possibly can. And you believe that you can. And when you know that you have a pathway to create a solution to problems, you have confidence. And let me tell you, you can be confident in the fact that there's always a solution to every problem. But we're not going to sustain that with negative energy. So the one thing you have to do if you want to maintain confidence is you have to watch your environment. You cannot allow negative energy to be a prevalent part of your environment. You need to mitigate negativity as much as possible. All right. So I want to talk next about why confidence feels so fragile today. Well, here's where people struggle. We place trust in things we haven't fully invested in. So here's an example. We have half-lived lives, and we pretend that we've lived a full life. We're on our way to success, but we haven't fully reached success. We borrow belief from other people instead of ourselves. I did this for a very long time. Instead of taking the time to really, really map out what I believe at the core. I'm talking existential beliefs, beliefs about higher power, beliefs about God, beliefs about the fabric of the world, beliefs about the afterlife, beliefs about politics, beliefs about religion. Go down the list. I did not come to the conclusion of my own beliefs. I instead borrowed beliefs from other people and tried to make them mine. It does not work for unshakable confidence. Because if I don't believe it, I will follow through with different action. And I will also be a Frankenstein version of myself. I'll be pieces and parts of a bunch of different people's values, beliefs, and principles, trying to live a holistic and fulfilled life. It just doesn't work. Untested principles. I had principles that I said I believed in that I didn't fully invest in because I didn't fully believe in them. Principles that you have tested are the ones that are going to keep you from being fragile. Next, external validation. If you're looking at external validation as a way to build confidence, I promise you're going to be like a person driving on a rickety bridge every single day, and multiples. There is nobody in this world who can give you confidence, who can imbue confidence. They can encourage you, they can build you up, they can help you see things about yourself that you quite possibly should have confidence in, but they're not going to build it for you. You have to build it for yourself. And then finally, shifting circumstances. Shifting circumstances. That's why people struggle, because they forget that circumstances are always going to change. There's too many factors. There's too many variables in life to keep anything the same. And one thing that we do know is one major certainty of life is uncertainty. Our environments are going to change. Our circumstances are going to change, which is why we need to focus on what we trust and rely in our circumstances. We do not trust in the circumstance. We trust in our values and our principles and our actions inside of circumstances. We don't trust in circumstances to give us confidence. And I also used to do this when I was a winner and I won games and I won things and I was successful in my own mind. I felt confident. I felt sure. I felt swag. I felt the joie de vivre. But when I failed or I lost, I felt terrible and I felt depressed. I felt down. I felt hostile. I felt angry. So external circumstances will toss you to and fro if that is what you're relying on to bring you confidence. Instead, we have to focus on what is inside during circumstances instead of looking at the circumstances to build our confidence, which it can't do. So let's get down to the core truth. So let me say this plainly. Confidence is not loud. It is not flashy. Confidence is quiet faith in proven things. And I love being around truly confident people. They're just comfortable in their own skin, relaxed. They let people be themselves. They're not sitting around with judgment. They're not shaming people. They're not guilting people into doing things for them. They're not manipulating. You feel a good positive energy around them. When life shakes, they don't panic. They may move. They may be urgent, but they're not hasty. They adjust routes as they go. They're calculated in the way that they solve problems. They include other people. They just have a unshakable stability about them. And here's the facts. Just like I talked about with the bridge story at the beginning, people who are not confident are constantly shaking. And if you're one of those people right now, I have really, really good news for you. You can take a different route. The best news I can give you. You can make new decisions today towards confidence and go away from the things that kill your confidence. So here's your leadership challenge this week. I want you to write down these 5 questions, and I want you to write your answers to them. Write down, number 1, what do I actually trust in my life? Who do I actually trust in my life? What do I actually trust? Get down to brass tacks and write down, what do I actually trust? Truly, you got to have honest, hard conversations with yourself. And if you don't trust somebody, don't pretend that you do. And don't pretend that you're writing this down to show somebody else. This isn't about anybody else. This is about you. If you really, really want confidence, you have to find out what it is you actually trust. Number 2, what principles in my life have proven themselves again and again and again? What principles have you lived by consistently that have proven themselves time and time again? Write those down. Number 3, what values work every single time? I know kindness works for me. I know that humility works for me. I know that consistency works for me. I know that hard work and working smart works for me. What about you? What values work for you every time? Number 4, what disciplines keep you grounded? I love to pray and to meditate and to listen to positive, enlightening materials. I like to go to the gym and discipline my body. What disciplines keep you grounded? And how consistently are you living them? And then number 5, what are you relying on right now that hasn't quite earned your trust? Who are you relying on right now that hasn't earned your trust? Because if you don't know what you trust, you'll always be fragile and you'll always be shakeable. And I want you to be unshakable. So remember, unshakable confidence is not about being unafraid. It's about being aligned. And when you know what you trust, you can calmly walk forward, even when the road changes. I'm Michael B. Ross, and I want to invite you to always be intentional, be exceptional, and lead.